Good morning. I'm Cynthia Curtis, Chair of the Planning Board. I'd like to introduce all the members of the Planning Board and say a little bit about each of them. As I work my way through this presentation, I will be introducing many other individuals who are involved in this process. The draft plan is up on the town website. It's been up and it will stay up. We hope you all have a chance to look at it. If it seems too voluminous to go through, I highly recommend you look at the recommendations that are posted at the end of each section. So, full disclosure on myself, been a resident of Croton Falls for 45 years. Frank and I live in the Yinksville section of Croton Falls, raised our 3 children here, commuted to the city. For us, Croton Falls is home. It is the train stop, the post office, and the little stores where we bumped into all our neighbors all the time. Chris Brockmeyer has not been able to be with, he's not here yet, maybe he's coming. And Gary Jacoby, Gary, raise your hand in the back. Gary just left our board, but Gary and Chris both live in Purdy's, a hamlet with issues very similar to Croton Falls, in that it's also a train stop. It used to have mom and pop stores, not anymore. This last Swan just closed, maybe it'll reopen. But it's got the issues of the pressures of development, lack of infrastructure, same thing. Bill Monty, who also could not be with us this morning, he is a former town board member, zoning board member, and he's on the housing board, and he lives on Hardscrabble Road. So every fall, he knows what it's like to live on Hardscrabble Road when the orchards all start bringing in people from the city, from all over. It's wonderful, but it is a little bit stressful on the people who live there. Ed Eisler, manning the laptop here, also lives in Purdy's, just outside the hamlet area. I got to know Ed when he worked on the Community Preservation Fund. He has experience with the walkability or the lack of walkability of Croton Falls, as his business profession has brought him there, and he has tried to navigate the roads. Nick Zaxis, front row, is our newest member. He lives on Lost Pond Lane, and we are really looking forward to his bringing fresh eyes and fresh perspective to the planning board. Rounding out our team is Don Onyefricht, our secretary, who greeted you, and our planner, Will Agresta, in the front row. Will has been with us for a very long time, and he's brought tremendous experience to our board. He knows what goes on in the neighboring communities. He brings a little bit of the ideas from Connecticut. It's been great working with Will. He knows our code in and out, and he understands what the town wants from his previous master plans, which I'll get to in a minute. Manning all of that equipment is John White, former town board member and former member of a comprehensive plan committee, which I'll get to in a minute. This is just his hobby, by the way, some hobby. Why a Croton Falls plan? Why now, and what does it entail? Back in 1964, the planning board and the town board then had a plan for the town. And Croton Falls, their idea then was to actually pick it up and move it. This is the site behind Primavera Restaurant. They thought about moving the train stop there and bringing in a lot of commercial development just on that site as an entrance to the community. On the other side of town, they had the similar idea. They were going to move Town Hall and the library over where the fire department is now and develop the area where the North Salem Post Office is a little bit bigger. None of that happened, and subsequent to that, a lot of zoning changes happened. With the actuality of the sewer line, the county sewer line coming up, basically the 684 corridor, the people on the town board at that time were very nervous about all of the housing development it might bring. So they rezoned most of Hardscrabble Road on the north side, all the way to the school. They rezoned it to industrial use because they figured nobody's going to bring industry up here. Well, the trunk line never came up north of Mount Kisco, but we were left with that zoning. And some of the development's ideas started to come in front of us. A plastics factory near the school, almost 1 million square feet of warehousing along Hardscrabble Road. plus several residential development proposals. So in 1984, that planning board said, we have to do something. We need a new plan, and we need to amend our zoning ordinance. And they did. They introduced 4-acre zoning, and ultimately that got adopted by this town. It helped preserve the character of our town. At the same time, for the hamlets of Croton Falls and Purdy's, they recognized that those were special little places that should remain little places, hold on to their historical character. They couldn't be broadened in any feasible way, but they should be strengthened, and they should make sure that the traffic issues and the safety issues are taken care of. That was the 85 plan, which became the 1987 zoning ordinance, which we have today. Then, in 1995, the town board ordered an update to the 85 master plan. That took many years to happen because in the middle of that process, the town had to deal with the settlement of the Continental decision. And that required a rezoning, bringing in some more density for housing and affordability. That took place in 2006, and it wasn't, that took place before 2006, but by 2006, the CPU, which actually recommended more commercial development in Purdy's and Croton Falls, went through a public informational meeting, and the people were not happy of Purdy's and Croton Falls. So they took that out. But they did leave in a lot of prospective changes, especially up in our corner of the town, with the Highgate parcel and with the potential of a golf course conference center on Hardscrabble Road. The RMF 6, that's the 6 units to acre, which was part of the Continental decision, and we had quarter-acre zoning. So it was a lot of changes. The next administration did not want to follow this plan. They rescinded it, and they called for the writing of another comprehensive plan. That plan, headed by John White and some other people, Catherine was on it, I think Martin was on it. That plan also took a very long time to put together. The group that put it together were all citizens like you. They weren't members of a town board or a planning board like us. They had many public informational meetings, and at the end, they basically supported and adopted to keep North Salem pretty much like we all have been saying all along. We like the 4-acre zoning. We like the semi-rural character. We like the low key on commercial development. We're not looking to bring in the big boxes and the regional stuff to impact us, but we do want a lot of local services to serve us. This is the plan that we have now. Anytime the town board or the planning board do anything, it has to be in conformance with the plan. That is our responsibility to make sure it is. If someone wants to do something that's not in conformance, it's up to them to convince the town to change the plan. So the plans have great importance, great significance. So why Croton Falls Plan, why now? The town board has been looking out for getting grants to do improvements for Croton Falls. They've been great. But in order to do that, it must conform to a plan. And we didn't have a plan that was very specific for Croton Falls and some of the ideas that were going to be generated from the grant monies that were coming in. So we needed to do a new plan just for Croton Falls. These plans take a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of voices, and a lot of preparation. And COVID didn't help. We got hit with COVID right smack at the beginning. And we paused. And I think it was good that we did pause, because we had to wait and see what was life going to be like after COVID. Were people going to come back and take the train again and go into the city? Were they going to start working from their home? Was there going to be more traffic on our roads because people are working from home? So in working on the plan, after identifying all of the parts and pieces, we realized that we needed a lot of help from our other boards. One of the boards we turned to was the Conservation Advisory Council. And with us here, I know we have Virginia Connolly. Virginia's over there. And did Melissa make it? Melissa Sultana? There she is, Melissa. And Idris, one of the new members. And did I miss anybody else from the CAC? No. So for the CAC, who do a lot of environmental review, and they advise the planning board on those, we had two major things that we wanted them to help us with. One was lighting, particularly lighting in the Croton Falls commuter lot. Now bear in mind, the CAC had already started working with the town board on Front Street. Front Street had all of those decorative lights from the 1994 plan, which at that time we thought were great, but we didn't realize about sky glow and all of that. You want downward lighting, and they were those orange glows. I think if you lived in the Hamlet area and had an apartment there, sometimes they shined right in your window. So the CAC worked with the town board, and we got all new lights on Front Street. But in the commuter parking lot, while they're very functional and they do light down, they're not quite keeping in the character of the community. So we asked them if they would tackle that. The other thing we asked them to work with us on is the landscaping. And there are pockets of little landscaping, but in front of the Great Wall, which I call the White Plains Wall, after all, it's not fieldstone. Shouldn't it be a fieldstone wall? This is North Salem. For many years, Drew Outhouse, who used to head up the highway department, he tried to figure out some plantings. There's this little bed there sandwiched between macadam and all that granite. And it never quite made it. They never quite lasted more than 1 or 2 seasons. So the CAC came up with some wonderful ideas. They're in here. They really know what they're talking about, and I hope the town board follows through, because I think their ideas will help soften that granite and bring it back to more the rural character that we would like to see in Croton Falls. Another group that we worked closely with was Historic Preservation Commission. And I know that Susie, our town historian, who's a liaison to that board, she is here, and Steve LaRocca. And Steve, and any of the other members here today? I don't think so, but there's quite a few on the HPC. We knew that Croton Falls had a lot of history behind it. We turned to them to help us recap that history and why it's so important for Croton Falls. We knew there were a lot of historic homes still standing in Croton Falls. Some of them retain their original character. Some of them have been reworked. Some of them have lost some parts and pieces. I mean, this is East Cross Street, which was redone with the help of the county. This is a house in my neighborhood in Yanksville that goes back to the late 1800s. This is on Route 22 across from Primavera. I don't know if you still recognize it there. And some of the buildings in Croton Falls are actually on the local Register of Historic Places, like this is one of the latest ones that was put on there. And some actually have potential to be on the state and national Register of Historic Places. Now, in the consideration of historic structures in the town, it's not just the condition of the structure, of the look of the structure, it's also who once lived there, whether or not it was moved when the city came in. So there's a lot of thought that goes into the historical character and the significance of it, and whether or not we should preserve it going forward. So we thank the HPC for their input on that. Recreation was very important in working with us. You've all met Lauren Rosasco. She's hiding in the corner there, our superintendent of recreation, and her assistant, Colleen. And we have several members of the rec committee here. Let's see if I can get them all. Is Andy Brown still here? He was here earlier. And Lauren Rankel? Yeah, there she is. Christiane? In the back row. Who else is here from recreation that I'm missing? Oh, John, the chair. John is here, thank you. So if I take ourselves back a couple of years, the town board had the town board inherited this space from an earlier in-rem, and it used to be just grass. And through the generosity of other organizations, we have the gazebo, we have some plantings, we have the fencing in the front, but no one clearly defined what the use of this space was going to be. And then the town board purchased behind this the old depot. Now the depot used to have historic significance. Right now, it's basically just a shell of a building. But when they first purchased it, it was like, ooh, could that be a senior center? Could we rebuild it? What use could that have? So we called upon Recreation to come out and do a site walk with us and start thinking about how to utilize these two spaces. But then the town bought this site. And that was a game changer. This site, we realized, was going to have a lot more potential than those two sites. So all the focus came here, and they've actually done a marvelous job rushing through all of this to get us in here today. But this is going to be the new home of the Recreation Department. This is the town's new community center, and a senior center as well. And you're going to see young kids here, and we're going to see young adults here, and we're going to see seniors here. And we hope the whole community comes to be here. And I know that Lauren is working closely with our library that's more in the center of town to do shared services and shared programs. So this is the first significant use of this site going forward. And this afternoon is the ribbon cutting ceremony, and we're so excited. All right, back to the plan, sorry. But the focus now is here, and we basically said to the town board, we need to pause on those two. We need to wait at least a year to see how this site is used, how the outside is used, whether or not there's going to be a play area or not, before we refocus on that. And to refocus on that, it really means that the rec committee might consider updating the recreation master plan for the town. That's at least 10 years old also. Some of the recommendations in there involved, we know that our summer recreation programs at Mountain Lakes Camp, well, at one point we thought we were actually going to be purchasing a portion of that and having a center up there. That's in the plan. It's not going to happen. The town created another ball field, a soccer field, at Joe Boardroom Park. That's not in the recreation plan. And now we have this site. So there's a need for the Recreation Committee to think about updating the recreation plan. In the process of doing that, we hope that they will also focus on these two sites and see whether or not they stay passive or active. Because if you turn it into something active, that's going to cost a lot of money. So those are the things that we have to weigh and they have to weigh. One of the other groups we called upon to work with us is the Climate Smart Committee. And we pulled in the Climate Smart Committee because we knew we were going to be doing a town-wide survey. And if we're going to do that about Croton Falls, well, should we take advantage of that and utilize that particular survey to bring in some additional information that will help Recreation? And Recreation created their own sections of that town-wide survey. And the Climate Smart Committee, and we have Catherine Daniels here, who heads up the Climate Smart Committee, and I don't know, is there anybody else here on your committee I would introduce? I know Idris is here. Yeah, okay. And Janine, yes, where's Janine? Wait, excellent. And in the corner. Thank you. Help me. Brandy, thank you, Brandy Keenan. Rec committee too, right? Oh, Brandy, sorry. So another group is helping us here. They have a whole section in this town-wide survey that we did. Very important to them and the work that they're doing. We also had the town engineer work with us. There are particular issues in Croton Falls. I should say town engineer, the town highway department, and the town police department. There are issues with drainage. Some of them have been taken care of, some have not. There are issues with, soon they're going to be repaving. You see the curbing is gone. We need to fix drainage issues before we repave. And there's issues with safety. Croton Falls, when we did the plan in 1994, we introduced a one-way system. If I go back 45 years when I was here and I used to go to, that was Wading's TV. I used to have my TVs repaired there. And when you went to the post office, it was two ways. And everyone just parallel parked. And sometimes you got there and you couldn't move and you just waited because they would run in, get their mail and come out. And that's when I first got involved and I went to the town board and I said, are you kidding me? Can we have a one-way system? And that's what we have now. And for most of us it works wonderfully, but we know occasionally people want to do the quick little in and park in front of Frank's Pizza. And we know that during the fall and winter, At the other end of the one-way system, they like to sneak in that way too. So we've got a lot of good ideas from the police and highway of how to handle the one-way system, how to improve the signage so people know. And most importantly, to pull this whole plan together, we reached out to you, the public. I mentioned the survey, but we also had 2 public informational meetings. They were extremely valuable. We listened to everybody. We wrote down everyone's comments. We have everything from the surveys. But I have to warn you, I mean, not everything that everybody mentioned or asked for makes it into the plan as a final recommendation. One of our jobs is to assess how many people commented on what, and start to weigh what will it take to satisfy that comment or that concern, what are the costs, what are the needs. That's our job, to take all of this information that we have from all of our committees, from the public, and from the survey, and develop this plan. So I'm not going to go through everything that we did. Like I said, it's up on the website. All of the recommendations are there. But I do want to talk about the top ones. And the top ones are what I call 2+1. The top 2 are traffic and water. Starting with traffic, we have Route 22. It cuts right through Croton Falls. It's the reason why back in 64, they're saying, you just can't make Croton Falls any bigger. Route 22 is a state road. It is narrow. You can't have parking along the side of the road. It's never going to be a little Katona where you have sidewalks, parking on the side of the roads, and then slow traffic in between. It's just not feasible here. To get the state to help us lower a speeding limit on a road is almost impossible. And it's really hard here because this is a major thoroughfare. They're coming down from the southeast. They're coming across from Carmel. Everyone wants to go south to work. Everyone wants to get to 684. It cuts right through our community. It basically separates the little business area from the homes. And it even separates homes on both sides going north. We looked at introducing new sidewalks on the east side. We have them on the west side. Historically, sidewalks have been on the west side of the road. But if you try to introduce sidewalks on the east side of the road, it's not just a cost, and often we can get grant money to build them. You could interrupt people's lives. I mean, this became a whole sea of parking. How do you, if you make people redefine a driveway, they're going to lose their parking ability. Further down Route 22, there are issues of slopes of the land, rock outcroppings, you name it. And if we do introduce sidewalks on both sides, now you've got that speeding traffic. And to me, 30 miles an hour on that road when you're trying to walk the sidewalk, that's fast. You've got big trucks, the mirrors, you feel as though, you know, do I really feel safe here? So that is a major issue. But what we do want to do is get people across the street. So we have been working with the town engineer to identify critical places to have safe crosswalks for people, and a minimum of sidewalks to make that conducive for the neighborhoods on both sides. We are still in the middle of our conversations with the DOT. Everybody moves slow. Try working with the DOT. We love them, but boy, to get them to the table, it's hard. But this is our current thought on introducing new sidewalk crosswalks to get across Route 22. What we hope is that they don't demand that there are these flashing lights at every one of these points. If we have to have flashing lights, maybe 1 or 2, but I mean, we already have 2 crosswalks further down Route 22. We have one from an old, like a 12-lot parking lot there, which is right across from the little green space, and there's another one where the church is. The one where the church is very important because their parking lot is across the street. So we started to look at how many people, I used to go out there in the mornings, watch how many people were actually walking down the neighborhoods to the train station and how many people were going back at night. trying to figure out what was the safe way they were getting to and from their homes, to figure out where should there be specific crosswalks for people to get across 22. So this is a work still in progress and very important. But the number one item that we thought was most important for Croton Falls is water. In the neighborhoods over here, the lots are much larger. They have individual wells and individual septics. In the neighborhood up here, it's a very old neighborhood, individual homes with individual wells and septic, and also a small water district of 12 homes that can't put septic and water together. Water districts are becoming very expensive. We only have 12 people here paying for the same costs that 70 people or so pay here, and Sunset has a water district. We have to worry about quantity, quality, and cost when we talk about water districts. For the Croton Falls Water District, they have several issues to deal with. Number one, they have a debt. Going back over 20 years ago, there was a $200,000 debt created that to this day has not been paid down. It's around $170,000 now. It should be paid down, but that's going to be costly for the people. But it has to happen. Water quantity. This water district has an excellent first well, but the second well could not meet the capacity requirements if the first well were to go out. The health department put the town on notice, I think over 10 years ago, that they have to come up with a second producing well. The town knows where it might get that. There is a site slightly north of where the current wells are. But that well, and including the new site that was purchased behind Primavera, we call it the Marriott site, the old Marriott site, that has wells too, but they both would have to be filtered. There is uranium in most of the underground wells in this area, just like in Sunset. Sunset has uranium in their well. It has to be filtered out. While you can find money to build the filtration system to do it, the ongoing costs are called operations and maintenance. For that, the district has to pay for them. The federal regulations on water quality are also changing. You might have heard the terms PFOS and PFAS. Those new regulations concern some contaminants that have gotten into water systems all over the country. And the federal level introduced it a few years ago that we had to start testing for it. Luckily, we passed up on the hill. I'm not sure if Croton Falls passed, and they did, thank you, and Sunset. The good news is that if you put in the filtration to get rid of uranium, you also could get rid of the PFOS and the PFAS. Federal regulation now, they're almost bringing it down to zero, no tolerance. So I'm bracing myself what's going to do to my neighborhood and my water district, and Croton Falls is going to have to brace themselves of what it might mean for their water system. So that's water debt, water quantity, water quality. Also improvements. This district had really old pipes that luckily most of them were all upgraded in the 90s. When we did the improvement plan for the business area, we replaced all the water pipes then, and that was followed up with a replacement of most of the water pipes throughout the system, with the exception of Route 22 north of the hamlet on the east side. That one little area was never done. But here we are 30 years later, and almost every year there's a break. Those breaks, they used to cost, $1,000 to fix. Now we're talking more like $10,000, $15,000, sometimes $20,000 to fix. So your general budget has to be increased to cover a break that most likely would happen once a year unless you do another upgrade of pipes. Very expensive. So we think, and our recommendations are, that the town board needs to focus on the water, because if you don't have clean water, you've got nothing else. And these are ongoing costs. It's a district. It's never going away. These are the only options for all the homes and the businesses. At the same time, We're hearing conversation about should there be a sewer district here. Anytime I hear a new taxing district, I ask myself 3 questions. What is the need? What is the impact? And what is the cost? Is it better to have a sewage treatment plant handle waste? Absolutely. There's no question about it. It's much better for the environment. But it's costly. What is the need for this area? We've received all of the, well, first of all, are there any failing septics? And according to the Department of Health, there are no failing septics, which is good. But people have to pump out on a regular basis. For the average homeowner, you pump out once every 5 years. And that is the regulation. You have to pump out at least once every 5 years. Depending on your household and your household size, your particular contractor who does that for you, he'll advise you if you should be doing it once every 4 years or once every 3 years. And that, a lot of that depends upon the size of your tank. For the businesses in Croton Falls, and this is our tracking system for both the pump outs, and then we've got the information for 2019, 20, 21, and 22. Some of the businesses are pumping out once a year, twice a year, 3 or 4 times a year. If you're a restaurant, there's one restaurant in Purdy's that is pumping out once every month. There's another one that's pumping out once every other month. This is costly, but it also depends on the size of your tank too, how your frequency goes. But this is something that is a burden to the businesses, so we can understand when the businesses says, what are my options here? I've got these tanks and I have to pump out once a year or twice a year or 3 times a year. The businesses also can't get any larger, just like probably some of you can't add on a bedroom or 2 unless you go to the health department and they decide whether or not your system can handle it. So for you as a residential owner, you have to stop and think about it. What are the benefits to me of possibly getting a sewer district and being tied in versus staying the way I am? What are the potential impacts that might not be so positive? Well, the new term we're hearing is transit-oriented development. We're a train stop, just like Purdy's, and right now the focus is bring in the infrastructure and bring in the housing. And actually what we're hearing is they're not even concerned if you have parking because you say, oh, people are going to walk to the train. Well, you can walk to downtown Croton Falls and you can walk to the train, but for your everyday shopping, going to the doctors and whatever else you need to do, you need a car and you need to park a car. But they don't seem to be paying attention to that. They just want the housing, and they're not necessarily saying affordable housing. So if you bring in the infrastructure, the good benefit could be that some of the people locally would benefit from it, but also the pressure would be on. Because truth be told, the town always has to be dealing with the pressures of development, the pressures of more housing or more affordable housing. We're required to update our plans to see what are we doing across the whole town, how are we addressing the situation. We feel pretty comfortable that as of yesterday, we're in good shape, but what is tomorrow going to bring? And if you build it, will they come? Probably will, and we all know that. So what is the town doing to try to figure this out? They have options. There's a large private plant in Somers, and there's a smaller private plant just over the border in Southeast. If you were to go into any private plant in another town, another community, you are subject to what they need and how they're going to charge you. Our town board, as the commissioners of the district, would have very little to say except how they would distribute the costs between residents and businesses. It would be, if you went to Somers, it would be the Somers Town Board that would weigh in on changing the regulations on what the base charge would be for the sewers treatment plant. So those things are not quite ideal for us. There's also private plants in our town, and there's a public plant in our town. And the same kind of issues there. One is too far away, the other one you'd be dealing with the private setup. So what could we possibly do locally? Initially, we looked at, could we just satisfy the business issues by maybe putting more septic under the parking lot? Unfortunately, under the commuter parking lot is where we have most of the drainage for the area. So while there may be ability to do something very small there, it would not do a bigger range, a bigger area. The other possibility is our next slide the Marriott? I'm sorry, a little sidetrack here. So when you look at a sewer district, one of the things you want to make sure is where are your wells and are your wells in good shape? On Route 22, if I can, here's your wells over here. There are homes on the other side. So there is a concern, would any of these homes impact any of the wells? And the issue you look for is nitrates. Well, the good news is we mapped out the nitrate levels of the Croton Falls wells. The maximum allowable is 10, and you are well within a low range, which is good news. Your mean or your median, whichever is more important to you, is at 2. The highest reading you've ever had is 3.57, which is very good. So when you look at the final options for what to do with a sewage treatment plant, one site left is, I don't know, Ed, is the next one Marriott? Yes, okay. So this is the old former Marriott site. Once again, along Route 22, we have Primavera. This whole site seems very large, but all of this is wetland and wetland controlled area. Remember, that's where they were going to move Croton Falls. But in the upper corner, where there was going to be a sewage treatment plant for the proposed hotel, is a potential site for doing a small plant or an alternative to a plant for a potential sewer district for Croton Falls. Could it do the whole neighborhood? Most likely not. Could it do the important areas? Probably, but it would be costly to build. Good news, we can always go for grant money, but it would be costly to maintain. So once again, this is a balancing act. We could drag this plan on and on and on until we figured out what could happen with a sewer district, but we decided that this is an item that the people who live there really need to start paying attention to whether or not you want a sewer district and communicating with the town board about this. Should they continue pursuing this, and how much are you willing to pay to solve this problem? Do you consider it a problem? Do you consider it a need for you, a desire? I think the town board needs direction from you. What we need to do is to wrap up the plan and get it over to the town board so that everything else they're working on can move forward on the basis of your input and the input of all the people who I introduced who have been weighing in on this plan. A lot of projects in Croton Falls, between the green space, the building behind, this building, the water issues that I mentioned that are extremely important. So what the future is for sewer and septic is something that's going to hang out there for a little bit. The town is considering going out and doing some testing of this site to see exactly how much of a sewer, what size of a sewage treatment plant they can do. Once they know the size, they can figure out the costs, and then they can start figuring out what neighborhoods might be able to join in, whether it's just the business area, which would be very costly for them if they stood by themselves, or a slightly bigger area, or even more of the homes to join in and help spread the cost out. So, to wrap it all up and to start taking some questions and comments from you, I want to focus back on the plan is up on the website. If you haven't seen it, we hope you do. Sections 2, 3, 4, and 5 all have our recommendations at the back. We hope that we picked up on everything that you told us at the first public informational meetings and on your survey responses. We're going to wrap it up probably by May, if we can, if we hold the public comment period open for another couple of weeks and see if we missed anything. We'll wrap it up and we'll send it over to the town board. The town board then has the option of either implementing all of our recommendations putting some of them on hold, prioritizing them, and what they might do with the whole issue of sewer districting. And with that, and before I take comments, I would like to mention that we have Supervisor Warren Lucas here, who I think most of you met, coming in, Deputy Supervisor Peter Kamenstein, and where am I? Brent? Catherine's in the front row, Martin was here earlier, and Brent is in the back row. So our job is to wrap this up and get it over to the town board. Their job then is going to be a little bit harder because they have to still wrestle with this issue, but they do need to hear from you on it. The best news is that this place is now open. This afternoon at 2 o'clock, there's going to be a ribbon cutting ceremony, if any of you want to come back.
Order, huh? But
Pardon?
kind of in reverse order, but we'll.
And recreation is moving in. A great significant move and the next use of this site. So before I start taking comments, I'm going to ask Nick if he would come up and man the whiteboard. And Gary Jacoby has got the microphone. Now, Colleen said that she would work the other side of the room if you want to pass it back and forth. The microphone is only for the purpose of this electronic show, which we are live. We're live streaming right now. So don't expect to hear your voice go loud. Just please talk loud enough so that we can hear you. And we'd like to know what you think, how good a job we've done so far, if we've missed the boat on anything, so we can begin. If you don't want to speak up now, we have index cards down here. You can grab one. You can jot down what your concerns are. Or you can email us or call us over the next couple of weeks, or actually use snail mail and send us a letter. We'd love to hear from you. So would anybody like to ask a question or speak now?
I'll start.
All right.
Okay.
Would you please state your name?
Sure. Carrie Gaini, and I live on 7 Warner Drive. And I have first of all, wonderful job. Hats off to everyone who is part of this planning. It's very, very impressive, and it makes me very happy and proud to live here in Croton Falls, what you're doing. My concern is I commute to the city, and I cross 22.
All right.
And it is, as I'm getting older, I'm really getting a little nervous, and I feel like I'm taking my life into my own hands someday. So I'm very anxious to hear and see that make quick progress, especially with the use of this building. It would be wonderful that children, teenagers, could safely walk from here to the town and go to the pizza shop and go to the train and do all that safely. So that is something I'm very concerned about. And the second comment, I would like to know what you have planned for the green space. You did a wonderful job, the town, with that event in October. It was fantastic. And I would love to see that used more frequently, perhaps a farmer's market, a co-op where we could all come and get vegetables every single week. So I'd like to hear what you have planned in that regard.
So very quickly on your first comment, I hope you take the time to come up and look at the 3 proposed crosswalks. And if you have anything to say about where we put them, whether it's going to work for you or not, we'd love to hear that. For the use of the green space, we're going to hope that the Recreation Committee will continue to think about that and to think about whether or not it'd be part of the use of this building. On the idea of the farmers market, there is a movement right now, and people are trying to, some of the business owners are trying to reintroduce one on 4 weekends over the summer. So talk to the folks at Folkways. I know they're spearheading that, and they're thinking about possibly using the commuter parking lot, which would be a lot more convenient for people. But yes, that is something that is on the minds of other people, and they're actually trying to work on that. So with the actual timing of how to use the green space, we hope that we pause and the Recreation Committee has a chance to weigh in and advise whether they think it should be a passive use or an active use. I mean, even if it's a passive use, we know that the occasional things that happen, those could still happen. It's on a daily basis, whether it's active or passive, that I'm talking about. Whether or not you have swing sets or something down there, because, like, for instance, that fencing would all have to be changed because everyone is so concerned about 22. So all of that type of thinking, we're hoping that our Recreation Committee will step up to the plate and start to weigh in on that and make it part of their planning process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm Trevor Peckham. I live at 615 Route 22. I just kind of want to double up on the commentary about train commuting and the streets. So obviously we live right across from the train station, but on the other side. And we only have to be on 22 for like 50 feet, and it's the most perilous 50 feet of walking
It is.
I'll ever do on any day. I'm also a cyclist, and I deal with crazy drivers through town, so I think sidewalks are obviously the ideal solution. I know that on that one side, it's MTA land and a pretty steep slope down into it. On our side, our land is pretty much right up there with retaining walls. So I think that's down the line the ultimate solution. I don't know what the cost or realistic timeline implications are of that. But I think it's just something that needs to get solved. You know, it's like every day I look out our front window and I see people walking down 22 as people do 55 through there, because you said 30 feels like you're zooming through there, but people drive like they're racing Formula One through the town. You know, especially we've got 3 tight, pretty aggressive corners in town on 22, and people just don't slow down for them with no shoulders. Right. So in the short term is enforcement of the speed limit something we can really push. I know none of us want speeding tickets for going 38 miles an hour in a 35, but there are people who are driving 55, especially trucks that for us specifically cause a lot of noise. I don't want to necessarily make that the issue. And there's a lot of potholes that they go through when you hit those at 50 miles an hour on a truck. It's loud. So I just think that's something for us, and it affects us specifically, like. And in the fall, just seeing those groups of people coming off the train and walking up to the orchards, that was really scaring me. Seeing like 20 people get wiped out by a guy who was texting, you know, who are used to the city, walking on the wrong side of the road and everything. And the other comment about that too is the underpass into town on the backside of town. That's like
22 underpass or the Bridge Street underpass?
The Bridge Street underpass. Okay. So I would say that's like a lane and a half wide.
Yeah.
It's obvious you're never going to get 2 directions in that, but with that extra space, could we create like a separated pedestrian path? You know, those like flexible things that you bolt into the ground that are like the little divider things. So something like that. So there's actually because and a little bit more light would be nice. But people can go through that pretty fast without seeing the pedestrians, especially when it's darker. You know. Right. So
the Bridge Street underpass is one way. Under the underpass, and in front of it, it's 2 ways. So there might be the possibility of that. We will definitely take a look at it.
I think that would be an easy fix.
Police and highway. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Thanks. Gary, we have a couple of.
Turn around. I'm Pastor Tim Wagner. Live at the corner of Mayapack Avenue. We've been trying to get the property cleaned up across the street from us, and I'm told that we don't have any ordinances that address how people keep their property. So I think the planning committee should make some suggestions to the board about an active way of keeping people's properties kind of neat. We've invested trying to get the parsonage repainted, and we're working on the grounds behind. But there's not a week that goes by that people coming to my church or people in town are noticing people that really are derelict in keeping their property. And evidently, I'm told that there's nothing anybody can do about that. So we've gone to the building department. So we need some kind of guidance from the planning committees that we maintain the beautiful character of the town and the hamlet.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm glad we have our planner here, and he can see whether or not there are any kind of regulations that we could put in place. Thank you. Gary's going to bring you the mic.
Well, thanks. Hi, everybody. My name's Tom. Can I read some brief remarks?
Sure, but could you hold that mic up?
Okay, this is also from my wife, Dawn, and the people at High Grade Market. One observation is we haven't addressed art or culture very much in this, and I know it's a small thing, but right now there are at least 500 people in Brooklyn with a big map of Manhattan drawing a 50-mile radius and thinking of where they want to move to. It's a competition. And every town needs them. They move in, they pay taxes, they fix up houses, and they fill our schools. We really need that. Changing the name of this place to a community center, I don't think is a good idea. I think they want the schoolhouse, they want the interests, they want the culture. And your graphs and charts, I think I have one of them here, say cultural events and social events, and they're way up. So I think that's very popular. So anyway, Croton Falls is on their map. It's a great place. Everybody's great. It's like Mayberry RFD great. But you remember what it was like a few years ago. We had blue tarps flapping on roofs, vine-covered vacant buildings, forklift batteries laying around, abandoned lumberyard, a full-on bordello, and a biker bar in town. So here's what happened. Artists moved in, the place picked up. Bram, you guys started it, repurposing old buildings. Anderson French, some other places, a wine store, everything came up a little bit, which is all good. Artists move in and places pick up. Art leads commerce. As an example, look at Soho, Chelsea, Hudson, Kingston, and Beacon. We now have what they call an art vibe here. I think that should go in the report. People come up here for the arts. And recently we had Nikita Ramos come up here on News 12. She did a story about driving around, seeing all the arts. I think it was great. My favorite show, American Pickers, did a show. They talked about the art. They love this angle. It brings people in. One idea for the green space could be a sculpture park, like in Long Island City. It turned the whole waterfront around, having sculptures in a park. People look at this and they go, wow, I want to live here. This is interesting. And we need these people. So say you hate theater, say you hate music, and you hate art. Who can blame you? But look at it financially. Art makes economic sense. And I'm an artist and a businessman, so I look at both ways. Your house, because of the demand and people moving up here, just went from $275 to $650. Everything is going up. Even if you don't sell it, you have the value there. Places like the Schoolhouse Theater, Lift Trucks Projects, having art, the rail yard art, it all adds value because people demand. They want to come in the city. We need to address this. This is totally out of the report. We should make sure this interesting stuff stays in town, unless it's in the report. Am I missing it?
Rail yard is definitely in the report. It's a wonderful place.
How about lift trucks? How about high grade?
Well, that's your private studio.
Well,
It's not open to the public.
It's something people go to. They're public spaces, galleries. We have writers, photographers, potters. It's all important to us. I realize we're just small people, but it'd be nice to have. It's a nice draw. And we get resistance every step of the way. We had music in town. Houston Person, famous jazz guy, a resident, played at high grade once. And we were smothered with regulations. We were told you can't have this, you have to have site applications, you have to redo everything, Board of Health. So we withdrew the application. That was one reason we had to get out. And another one of your charts, why don't you frequent Croton Falls? It's nothing to do. It's a red line. So there's something to do. Why are we shut down? We want a guy in the corner playing a guitar. It's fun. It's something to go out to. Locals want this. Everybody wants it. It's a sculpture park. We have the woman living up here who built the Socrates Sculpture Park. Great resource. It turned the whole waterfront in Long Island City around. Why not talk to her? She'd be great. Be a great idea. After a while, and we also offer an invitation for you guys to come visit. I don't think anybody, very few people from the planning board have even walked in our store and seen what's there. So we need you guys to come in. Please come in and talk to us. The local police come in once a week and we love it, just to check in and say hi. It's wonderful. It makes you feel good. Please, guys, come on in, talk to us, find out what's going on, what our problems are. Police are shuttering all over, like Purdy's and Daniels. We're trying to stay open. Dawn and Milton can't be here. They're working. And by the way, come by for a great mimosa brunch. I thought I'd throw a plug in. One last quick story. Walt Disney approached Burbank, California Planning Board with a park idea. He called it Disneyland. They thought about it, did a master plan, then said, no, we don't want all that honky-tonk noise and carnival atmosphere. So he said, okay, that's fine, good idea. He got in his car, drove down to Anaheim, and the rest is history, and Burbank became a slum. We need help. So that's my 2 bits. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. So just as an answer to one of his questions, I'm I'm pretty sure that the head of the Recreation Committee did talk to the gal about the sculpture park, and so that's something that I know is on their list of things to think about going forward when they do their plan.
But why is that going through the rec department? Why
Because the rec department, because we try to utilize every board and committee to get more voices to the table. You don't want 5 people on one board deciding everything. So this is very appropriate for them to look at green spaces and park spaces and how they should be utilized.
So
And to
I was-
analyze the, of course everybody loves culture. Everybody loves culture all across town. There's no question about it. And we're so fortunate. We have so many artists and musicians who live in town. We have the Hammond Museum. We have Union Hall where you can take classes and yoga and dance classes. We have the library that is constantly filled with people taking art lessons, painting, and there is an exhibit wall there where local artists display their art. And yes, we have the Rail Yard Art Studio. What a fabulous place that is to go and take courses, everything from clay molding to painting. So yes, it's very important. Art is to everybody in town. No question about it.
I have a ton of respect for you. I just don't see it in these reports, how to help art, build it up. Make it, like Ridgefield is a whole town as a cultural center. It's a draw, it brings people in. We need young people in here. They're not coming up for a senior cafeteria or something. They're not coming up for a swing set in the playground. They want something to do at night.
Thank you.
That's my business. This is my friend Andrew.
Yeah. And I'm from South Salem, so you don't really have to listen to me at all. A cultural center is a community center, but a community center isn't necessarily a cultural center. When you say community center, you're making a certain amount of implications, I think. I think also that the Schoolhouse Theater has, is this? No.
Yeah, it is getting onto the live
Is it
stream.
getting there?
Yes.
The Schoolhouse Theater has decades of legacy and history to it, and I would hate to see it get subsumed under the rubric of community theater, community center. I think that missells it. I think calling this place a performing arts center, a North Salem Performing Arts Center, or a North Salem Cultural Center would serve the same function, while at the same time selling the thing that Tom is saying is so important, our cultural future. Tom put it extremely well, and I think you should give it a thought. It's only the cost of a sign at this moment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? We have Kurt in the back. And then Elizabeth in the center after Kurt.
How are you? I think this place does need to be a community center. We need places for kids to go before school, after school, for things for kids to do. There's nowhere for that in this town. Okay, that's why you need this. You have sports, that's great. Fields used all summer long. This is a great place to use after school, all the time, rainy times, in the winter. You need a place for the community to come and to use, not for the outside people and have other areas come up. You need something for the community. These kids need places to go.
Elizabeth.
Could you send this down? Hi, I don't live in Croton Falls. I live on June Road.
Say your name.
Oh, my name's Elizabeth Almeida, and I live on June Road. This is a totally different topic. I read the master plan, and I see that about 30% of Croton Falls is undeveloped. And that really concerns me because of that TOD, that transit-oriented development that is in the governor's budget and is being hammered out now. And I guess my question to you is, does anyone know if anyone is thinking about developing that whole area that you see in yellow up there?
Yes. It is, I've had at least 4 people come in and talk to me about it. That is a site, most of that area right there, 160 acres, is part of a settlement. There is a standing settlement agreement for that site. It would be extremely difficult to develop it the way the settlement agreement is written. The price, that place is now up for sale. the price has gone 6 million, 4 million. I think now it's under 2 million. There are a lot of people looking at it. They have been coming in and talking to me about what are the constraints of the site. It has many, many constraints. Once you get up on it, it's a pretty nice site. But you're absolutely right. It's a big concern for us. We do mention it in the plan, something to keep an eye on. If anyone does buy it, at the end of the day, they'll probably be back in front of the town board renegotiating the settlement, because that is the zoning that stands on that site as of right now. The underlying zoning is R1. So the last plan that we did, the recommendation was to have 1 acre zoning there. But what could happen through a renegotiation of the settlement is anybody's, it all depends on what feasible options come in. So yeah, it's a big concern. And there's another site that is also like 20 acres that connects to it. Oh, here. So this is the 160 acres, and it includes this. And then there's another piece here that is potentially developable too. It's got the old Victorian house on it. It's a lot of vacant land, a lot of potential.
The Salinger Farm Orchard is also up for sale. Just north of
Really?
Not a lot of money in apples versus what the property's worth.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Hi, I'm
yeah.
I'm Erica Wu, and
I'm sorry, everybody. We have one more speaker.
I'm Erica Wu, and my husband Bruce and I live on Close Hill Road, and Bruce has been there over 30 years. I've been there over 23 years, and I've just 2 points. The first point is I wonder if we couldn't call this the Croton Falls, Community and Cultural Center. I mean, I think it's a phenomenal place, and it lends itself to all and to everything. And that's, I think, the beauty of Croton Falls, which I've always thought of sort of what Brooklyn is to New York. So that's the first point. The second point is, I think Carrie had hit the nail on the head. I think the most important thing and the most terrifying thing is trying to get across 22. And having been here so long and having raised kids here, and having had brought them to the bus stop right on 22, it is terrifying.
Yes, it is.
And it always has been. I can't tell you how many near misses I've seen in the morning with kids nearly getting smashed. The buses, people go right through when the stop sign is out on the bus. People go right through it in the morning.
Right.
We've seen car accidents at night, car accidents in the morning, and this is over 20 years. So I love the idea of being able to walk into town, but you really are taking your life into your hands. And I don't know if those crosswalks are a great idea unless we put like something in place beyond just a white line. I mean, it's a phenomenal idea, and I love it, but I'm really scared about it because I live there. And I can't tell you the craziness that I see every single day.
Yep.
And people don't care. They have their sights on getting to 684, getting to the train, getting to wherever they want to go. It's not worth it. And that's the most important, beyond sewers, beyond anything, is the safety of our residents.
Right.
And so I think that's the most important thing that needs to be tackled is safety, and how can we implement that. And
think you're
the
absolutely
rest
right.
will follow
Yeah.
beautifully.
I think when we meet, yes, when we meet with the DOT, I think they are going to recommend the lights, at least when you push a button, and you have to get the attention of those people in the vehicles. Yeah.
Just straight in front.
It's okay. Hi, I'm Allison Hublard Hirschman. I've lived in Croton Falls since 1996. I live literally in the backyard up on Sun Valley Heights. I am part of the Schoolhouse Theater productions. I have been for years now. I want you all to understand that the Schoolhouse brings in North Salem students to work on these productions. I have had people help me run costumes, learn about backstage. I also teach down at Purchase College. I run the costume shop down there, and we bring our students up here. There are students learning in this building from the Schoolhouse Theater. So the schoolhouse's theater, yes, is an outside element. The rehearsals are done in New York City, not to invade the space too long in this building. The actors are professional SAG actors. They work on Broadway, they work off Broadway, they bring things to our community. So please understand that it's not an outside element coming into this space. To me, it is part of Croton Falls.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that.
So just to make it clear, I mean, they are like any group here, wherever, who want to use this space. That option is there.
Right, and
You
it's,
just have to
they
go
pay
through
for
an
the space,
application
that
process,
benefits.
And they are going to be using it for a couple of productions. We just want to make sure that since this is now owned by the people of North Salem, that a
Absolutely.
local group, whether it's acting or performing or musicians, they all get to use this space.
And
everyone is looking
and the
forward
rec
to that.
department will have control over that, and
Yes.
and that's why a schedule is made, right? So that
Everything
so
has to be
that
scheduled, everyone has to get their application
I think we can
in.
all play together.
I'm sure we can all play together.
I'm very emotional about this because this space is such a special gem, and I would not want it to see. I raised 2 children in this town. I always wanted more community offerings for the the children that don't do sports. Also, that my kids did sports, my kids did theater. I always wanted more theater, more sports, whatever we could bring to the community. But I just want to send the message that the Schoolhouse Theater is not an outside element. It really includes, I know technically it is, but it really is very inclusive of everyone in the community.
Thank
So,
you.
thanks.
Anyone else?
I like what Erica.
Could you identify yourself, Ms. Ingram?
Yes, and Zinga Milanes. I'm in Croton Falls. I just want to put on the board, I didn't see it go on the board, what Erica said about that sign. That's a very good idea, Community and Cultural Center. I think that would be a very good name, North Salem Community and Cultural Center.
Thank you. Anyone else? Scott? Oh, yes, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Billy, 628 Route 22, Croton Falls. I just want to go off on what this lady said. I forgot your name, I'm sorry. About the crosswalks. Up by the church, they come over that hill coming from Brewster.
You're at the community church.
The community
not the
church.
Okay.
Coming over that hill coming from Brewster is probably, we sit on the porch and have dinner, and it's dinner and a show. Because they are blasting at 55 miles an hour there, and they don't slow down. To pull into the church, you're taking your life into your hands. The problem is, and I know Pastor Tim, I have, and many other members of the church have complained to the police that we need enforcement up there. I think that's part of the major problem is there is no enforcement. They just blow that stop sign, 55 all the way. And so we need more enforcement because safety is an issue up there. And I'm surprised we haven't had more issues than we've had. So.
Yeah, I personally know what you're talking about. We used to have cars parked along the side of Route 22 on that same hill. And I used to commute on a daily basis. And the commuters would just open their door. Here you are coming along, and you've got to make a decision. Am I going to take off that door and her leg, or am I going to do a head-on with the car coming at me? So the good news is we at least got the parking eliminated on the side of the road there. But you're absolutely right. They race up there, and I wouldn't want to be walking on those sidewalks every day. So we definitely have an issue. We are so looking forward to working with the DOT to see how we can slow down that traffic. Thank you. In the back. Oh, Scott, go ahead, Scott.
So Scott Hirschman, I'm also at 8 Sun Valley Heights Road, and as Allison said, we've been here almost 30 years. Raised our kids here, and I just want to elaborate on the comment about pedestrian circulation. And I mean, in making this a community center and hearing, yeah, we need a place for our kids, but you're going to drop your kids off with a car because they can't walk here. I mean, and even the crosswalks, which a way of getting across that street safely, across 22 safely, is important, but it still only serves that little area right in front of the downtown. So we're up on Sun Valley Heights Road. We've got 41 I saw. I think it's really 40. I think you got some businesses there that counted as residences, but 40 families on that loop. We can walk that loop fairly comfortably. Our kids can walk that loop. But for 10 years, I commuted and I did not park a car. I walked down 22 every morning and back every night. Yeah, it's really scary. Yep. Allison won't let me do it. She'll come get me if she's there. But that's a problem because it's a half a mile, and you talk about being concerned for the environment and climate change. I have to drive a car to get there safely. It's a half a mile. I tried taking a bike. That doesn't work either. That's not safe either. Yep. So we're looking at this in little isolated pockets, but you still have to drive to get between one little area and the next. Your kids can't use this space unless they live in proximity to it, unless you're going to drive them. So forget about like after school. Are you staying home to take your kids here? Or is this something that really functions for the community? In looking at, you said water and pedestrian traffic were the top two concerns, and the top concern being water, the second pedestrian traffic. Well, how many homes does the water affect? I understand it's a big problem. And how many families are affected by the lack of pedestrian traffic? I think maybe those priorities need to be reversed.
One of the things that I didn't mention, and I'll say we dropped the ball on it a little bit because I didn't hear from the community, but the Sun Valley area, to get people here over there, we started on the road of seeing, is there any way that we could develop some kind of walk through the woods kind of pathway to connect those two neighborhoods so you don't have to go down on Route 22? And I think going forward, we need to revisit that and see whether or not we can make a connectivity between here and here. I know I tried to walk from there to the dentist once, and it was like, I will never ever do that again.
Historically, ways to walk through because my neighbor grew up in my house.
Right.
Tell me how to do it.
Right. Well,
I tell you, there's lots of poison ivy.
Well, we can take
Don't do it.
But let us know where that was, because I think it's something that we need to re-examine. We'd love to get all three neighborhoods connected. There is a walkway through here for my neighborhood, but then once again you have to get down and get across 22. It's very hard. Yeah. Gary, where are you with Mike? Okay.
Hi, my name's Jeremy Reiser, and I live at 9 Maple in town. I wanted to offer what I hope is a perspective to be able to bridge what I think is coming from both sides of the room about arts things. We have the question of, I think, of professional artists and also of arts programming. And we obviously want to have lots of arts programming through this center. And I guess the question here is, how do you want that to happen? Do you want it to be because there are artists in town teaching your kids or doing senior programs, or do you want to ship in people from the city? How do you actually want to be able to have artists in town? And I think the question is then, what is the relationship between like a live performance or an art show of professional visual artists and what you do in town for taking a class, whether that's a music class or a visual arts class? And if one of the major issues in town, there's nothing to do, like, how are we actually going to expand that programming? And I hope that's something that you'll talk. I run a nonprofit doing Baroque music, the Academy of Sacred Drama. I hope you'll talk to people like me and other artists in town about what you want socially related to what you're doing. I mean, do you actually just want classes? Do you want performances? And how do you want that to happen? What is the link that you want to your community?
Thank you. Good points. Just as a little aside, when Kurt spoke about having kids come here after school, I know Kurt is on the school board, and I think there's going to be some preliminary talks about how the school can work with the recreation department here and actually maybe transport some of the kids here and have after-school programs or maybe before-school programs. So it's so wonderful that in this small town, everybody tries to work together and to figure out these angles and whether or not they would work. So that's the one good thing there. And I can reinforce that people in North Salem love to have the interaction with professionals. I know I take dance classes over at Union Hall. I absolutely love it. It's worth the drive for me over there. And there's some professional people who teach there. So, you know, who knows, maybe one day we'll have a professional dancer teaching in one of these studios here. I mean, I would look forward to that. I wouldn't have to drive across town.
Okay. I just have one other suggestion that I thought of while we were all talking about the traffic in town. If we could tastefully think of putting up a sign on both sides of the railroad bridge, so the overpass, say mid-August, reminding people school is in session or school's about to start, to remind people to slow down, because that does, if you know, I know in my whole life, if I see a sign like that, I'm a mom. I look at that speedometer and I go, oh my God, you know, so maybe we could think of a tasteful sign on both sides, entering in, entering out. You're reminded that there's children crossing.
I know we have the school bus stop signs, but that is definitely something to think about. Thank you.
Right back here. Sorry, I'm going to add to the traffic conversation for the 80th time. I think at the end of the day, stand up. At the end of the day, infrastructure is going to be the solution, like whether it's sidewalks or whatever. But again, the multiple comments have come about enforcement. And the example that I can think of just as a case study to kind of prove that this can work is, I don't know if there are any skiers in this room, but Route 100 in Vermont is where most of the ski areas are. And there's kind of this general knowledge that it's a 55-mile-an-hour road, and every time it goes through a town, it drops to 30 or 35. And pretty much if you go through a town at 55, you will get a ticket. It's not a maybe, you will get a ticket. Everyone who has ever skied in Vermont has gotten a ticket on Route 100. And I think like, oh, not you? Okay, I've gotten at least one. But it's just when people are going to say, is it worth speeding? If I speed every day and I get through Croton Falls 20 seconds faster every day, is it worth $150 every 2 years? But if they do it, they know they're going to get pulled over every single time, they stop doing it. So I think in the short term, that is the only thing that is actually in our control until we can build sidewalks, which again are expensive and time consuming. So.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, hold on, my wife wants to add it.
Sorry, I'm Alex, his wife, same address. Definitely.
You never know.
We have a big house. No, I'm kidding. Just back, and I think you mentioned it, just back to the crosswalks not necessarily being enough. I'm not scared crossing. I wait, I take my time, and when it's clear, I trot. Yep. But the walking against that line of traffic, I stop. If there's a car coming, even though I have ample room on the shoulder, I stop, I look at them. He made me do it. He would, you know. And I just look at it, wait for it to pass, and then I keep walking. And I think that, again, is the struggle. It's not necessarily the crossing, because you can wait for the gap. It's the continued kind of, it's the coexistence on that line of the vehicles and the
Just to be
pedestrians.
clear, we weren't saying no sidewalks on the east side. It's just you may not see an entire connectivity, but each of these crosswalks does have sections of sidewalks with it. You're absolutely right. One of the site walks that I did with my board, I deliberately did it at 5 p.m. and we were out on the sidewalks. I wanted them to experience what it was like for the commuters to have to walk on these. Now, we were on the side with the sidewalk, and it was like, you couldn't, I mean, you literally felt as though you were being pushed to the side. They were going by so fast. So, yes, excellent points. Thank you. Anyone else? Nazinja and Tom. Oh, you have Tom. Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to offer a quick response to the two gentlemen about community involvement. Artists are not totally an elite group, and there are a lot of artists who come in and help people, and I like to think I'm one of them. We did a mural at Katona Art Museum with 14 kids and worked with them. I've worked with FIT, Fashion Institute, and Montefiore Medical Center, up at Lift Trucks with 30 kids developing a virtual reality alternative to opioid addiction system. We worked with kids in Puerto Rico. I love kids to come by. They offer great ideas, and it's my job to talk to them. So it's not just all or nothing. We're just not off somewhere painting. And this place could be both. It could be, I'd love to have a show here, invite kids in, show them how it's done. I can't believe it. I never thought I'd be here, but I'm actually a role model for kids. How unlikely. But they see me, I'm married, I have a normal family, I have a job, and they go, oh wow, okay, so you don't have to live by cutting your ear off and waiting for your paintings to sell when you're dead. And I show them ways you can work in business and ways you can work with art to make a living. One of my standard things is everything changes every 10 years in the art, in visuals. You look at a movie that's 10 years old, you go, wow, look how different that looks. So get engaged and start anywhere in the art business, designing, painting, just anything. Skateboards, Coke cans, cars, clothing. So I think we actually do try to engage people, and this could be a place like this. So thanks for listening.
Great.
Thanks,
And I
Gary.
think there was a hand in the back. Oh, and Azinja. Could you wait for the microphone, please?
Hi, Cynthia. I just wanted to ask you a question. You mentioned you did the walk at 5 o'clock. Where was it down? Was it from the train to here?
No.
And try to get here?
We started in the commuter parking lot, and we walked north as if you're going to the community church. Because at that point in time, we were talking about the lack of the pipe replacement on the other side, how to get across the street, and how much of a sidewalk extension you could do there. And then we walked back down towards, and we went around the corner as far as the green space.
Okay, so
area.
now that's
but
good.
We did not. I've personally walked several times up and down Owens Road and the shallower road, I think it's Lee, to see whether or not local sidewalks were feasible on the side streets. And of course, a lot of the residents use the roads to park their cars on a regular basis. So that would cut into that option, but everything's on the table when it comes
Now,
to
can you
sidewalks.
do a walkthrough from the train station to this theater? Now, when you get to the park, that's where it stops, and then it's like 2 blocks of it's perilous, and you can't. And if you cross the street where the little parking lot is to try to get away because there's no sidewalk on this side, you can do it for a little bit, but then there's a blind spot when people coming the other way. So I think they should do a walkthrough around this 5 o'clock to see how it is to connect from the train going to the theater. Then you'll see those other 2 blocks that maybe there could be some kind of extension.
You're absolutely right. And one of the things we also looked at is Owens Road is very steep. So whether you're walking up or down, so we were looking at Lee Road because what would people more likely do? And that's something that we need to hear from the community. Would they cross sooner at the curve and then go up Lee, which is a long gradual, and the use on that road is very low key. But the Owens Road, even coming down, I don't think I would do it with my knees the way they are these days. But those are both very good points. So how would you flow? Right. And actually some of the people who commute to the train station could give us some good input on that. You know, over the years they've experienced with different ways of getting down to the train. So if you tell us your route, we really like to know that and what the condition of your route is and where you choose to cross 22. That would be very helpful. We hope you send in that information. Yes.
Hi, I'm Brandy Keenan. I live over there. I've been here for about 15 years. I'm an arts person. I did theater in college. I managed a black box theater for Vassar College's summer theater program, directed an art gallery in Soho. My husband's in a band, very into the arts. But I also recognize that as much as I want children exposed to the arts and to have and also to let adults experience arts. 'Cause I think there's a lot of us who would like to be like, oh, I'd like to direct a play again. I did that way back when I was in my 20s. It's not just about arts. If I can say that, I think a lot of people can recognize that. People, community, kids, they're into environmental science. They're into technology. There's a lot of things here other than arts that we can support in addition to an art community. If it's true that there are North Salem students interacting with the Schoolhouse Theater, I'm on the school board. I would love to know that. I'd love to know who those kids are. I'd love to partner and make that a real connection, because as far as I know, I was unaware of that.
And I'm a former school board member.
Right. No, I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying we should collaborate. Like, we should know about that. There's probably a lot of kids in the school who have no idea that they could learn how to do lights. And that's another thing where it's a career choice. Like, it's something you could get kids interested in. Like, this is how you do set design. Like, that floor, you can learn how to paint that floor with perspective to make it look like wood, to make the stage look larger. So there's a lot of opportunities here, and I hope that we keep really open-minded and supportive. I do have one nitpicky thing to say. So I'm going to speak for the children of Croton Falls. There are about 11. I wouldn't let them write a letter. I wouldn't let them come here. There's like 11 of them that sled down that hill. And Lee Pope respected that, which is why there's that gap in the bushes, because that's where the kids stand and then they sled down. Now, those are 11 that are old enough to sled. There's some more coming up that are going to be sledding, and I've been here for 15 years, and I know the Langs kids were doing it, the Dearborn's kids were doing it. I kind of blame it on the Dearborns.
We had a jump right in the middle.
Well, yeah, that's the one you taught my kids. And I don't want to get rid of all of my children, just one. So the sign is problematic, the new one. I love it, it's beautiful, yay. But I guarantee you a kid's gonna slam into that. And I was just wondering if there could be a little rethinking about that white sign.
Okay.
Because the kids were kind of, I won't tell you what Hobbs said, it involved cursing. But they were like a little upset. So I just thought that I would speak for the kids that they're a little bummed out about that. And
Glad
then
you spoke up.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just went up one day. I'm not sure what the decision was and why it's
Yeah.
not at the bottom. So people because a lot of people come from the east side of town, they're not going to know where it is. So,
Yeah, it's when you
but it's
pull up,
and
you're
we'll
kind of
figure
like,
it out. And this is good to know.
Yeah, I think maybe if it
You better
was-
check with the rec department about these kids sliding down the hill.
do we need to have a permit now?
That's great.
Damn.
That's
Right, and then I have one more question. I don't know if this is going to be a rec department thing or whatever, but the garden that got pulled out.
Yeah.
Also, totally get it. I mean, my daughter was like, "Those are the
was some
trees of
good
my
stuff in
childhood,"
there.
but I get it.
Yeah.
What is there a plan for
Not
what?
yet.
Not
but
yet.
I'm sure they're working on it.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you have to figure out. Yeah, you have to
It's-
figure out
it's
the
planting
use first.
season.
Is it going to be a swing set here? Are they going to be able to cordon off part of the driveway, part of the parking lot, part of the time, and make an outside play area?
Okay.
Would it have to be there? Do the seniors want an outside place with benches or whatever? I think that's
Just have
all
to figure
part
that
of.
out.
Let's see how everybody's going to use this building, what they feel they would like to do outside, and all of these ideas. Please keep feeding them to Lauren Rosasco, and then they will develop a plan. And they might do trial and error. They might start with something, put a bench out there, a picnic table, whatever, and decide, no, it's not working there, or this is working there. This is why it's good to be in the space and start utilizing it and figuring it out as you go. But excellent ideas, and yep, thank you. And you're on the rec committee, so work with those. Get your rec committee working on it. Anything else? All right, well, I'm going to wrap it up. We would love your comments to keep coming in. And you've heard your neighbors talk, and we really do want to hear the input from the people who walk and cross. What you feel about sidewalks on the local roads, what you feel about sidewalks on Route 22, and how to get across 22, what you found to be the best routes. This is one of the critical things. We haven't been able to get, the DOT in Albany wants to talk with us to be at the table. Usually we deal with the DOT in Poughkeepsie. They came in the first time, so our engineer is working on getting that meeting set up, and I would love to have your feedback before we have that meeting with the DOT and try to nail down the safe areas to cross, the minimum amount of sidewalk we need to make it work. And then when we send it over to the town board, I know they know how to find the money to build it. So we need to hear from you just what will work for you and make this community a little more walkable, something we all want to do. Thank you. I applaud all of you for being here. Thank you very much. This is an ongoing process. We've got a wonderful recreation committee. Keep your ideas flowing to them. We have a wonderful historic preservation committee. Stay in touch with them if you've got an old building or something and you want to know a little history about your house. They can help you. We've got the CAC, who are into environmental issues, landscaping, plantings. Everybody worked together on this. I'm so happy to work with all of the people. And once we get over the town board, who knows? They might have some fresh ideas and kick it back to us to flush something out. We're willing to help them. We hope Rec Committee will do the rec plan. We're willing to help them too. The more people we have around the table working on this, the better. And we've got school board people here too, because they're going to be an important part of this.
No,
Thank you, everybody. Warren.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming today, and Cynthia and the planning board and all the other boards that have been involved in this process. You know, when you look back at the 2011 master
Warren,
plan.
can you come into the light so everybody can see you?
Okay. You never want to be in front of a big ugly crowd, but this is a friendly crowd. So I just want to thank everybody for coming out. I was saying thank you to the planning board and the other boards that have been going through this process. When you looked at the 2011 plan regarding Croton Falls, was it a page?
Yeah.
It was about a page, and it said we have Croton Falls and there's some businesses there, and we need to probably figure some other stuff out. And that's one of the reasons why we're going through this. The town board stepped up. And if you're familiar with Dino and Artie's, that property down there, which is with the gazebo, that's a brownfield site, right? There was $1.1 million to clean it up. In 2018, the DEC said, okay, you don't have to test anymore. And we, as soon as they said that, the gazebo went down, the plantings went in, everything went up. We didn't want them to change their mind, because that was a process that we had to go through that was somewhat complex. We purchased the property in back of it. Quite frankly, there were two reasons. Part of it was because it was a disgusting mess, and it was kind of grandfathered that way. There was just stuff all over the place. And the other thing is, because we do have issues with the businesses and septics and stuff, we needed a place, God forbid, down the road, if one of them had a problem, and I know they do on occasion, that there was some place to put tile fields or something else. And so we cleaned that up, and it's part of that green space. And I'll talk a little bit about this afternoon, but when it came to this building, Chris Pope, he's a senator in Montana, he called me up in March, I think it was 2020, and said, are you interested? And I said, absolutely not. It's not in our capital plan. It's no place. And we went back and talked about it on the town board, and they said, hey, this is an opportunity missed. And so the place is going up for a fair amount of money. We offered about half of what he originally had it up for, and we had to put a lot of money into it. You don't see it at this point, but if you want to walk up in the attic, it's completely foam insulated. All the walls are insulated. The roof had a bunch of leaks. So we've spent a lot of money on those types of things. And I have to thank Lauren and a bunch of the other folks that have been involved, and Colleen, and just kind of getting the place to the shape it is right now. Bram was here for a week or two with his team, and if I told you they cleaned this room up, this room was 3 years of sitting here with dust and gypsum, that's all foamed and new walls. They cleaned this place up. There was dust all over the place. So I thank him for bringing his folks in and doing that type of work. In fact, all the lights, they're crystal clear. They took every one of them down, cleaned them all out. So there's a lot of work going on in this building. It wasn't something we had anticipated originally, but at this point, I think it's going to add a lot to, hopefully, the arts in the town of North Salem. But again, just coming back, all of this goes into the Croton Falls comprehensive plan, really is what we're trying to put together now. And instead of being one page, it's, 100? It's 100 pages at least with the questions, and it has to be at least that long. It's important that you provide input. I've heard a lot more about walking community than I think I heard in the past. And there are issues with all the little sites, but nothing's insurmountable. Everything can be addressed. There may not be enough, edge on the road to put some of these, but all those things are fixable. And as Cynthia said, all these things cost a fair amount of money. We put 350 feet of sidewalk in Purdy's, going from where the Swan Deli was up to the top of Exit 7, and that light thing there. And it's all grass. It was flat. There was no pipes or wires in the way. It cost $543,000. And that was an 80-20 grant, so we paid a 20% of it. The state DOT paid the rest, and that was on grass. So some of these sidewalks are going to be they're going to be very expensive, but it's not something that we can't work and find money for. We talk to the DOT all the time about a bunch of different projects. So what I would ask especially on the DOT stuff on the sidewalks. I'd love to see a map of where everybody walks, because I'm hearing that people walk a lot more than I thought they did, and I'm hearing that people would walk more if they could. So you have to get that input in, and I know we've captured a lot of it, but I think I've heard more about that today than I have in the past. And so for me, I'm taking away that that's kind of that's one of the more important things. The water we'll deal with. The sewers, just to throw it out there, it's grants. We'll get it built for probably nothing, no cost to the community, but there is ongoing maintenance, and that's really kind of what we're focused on, to make sure that that's as low as it can be if we move forward. The businesses are really my prime concern. Cynthia did show the nitrates up there. I look at it all the time. I've been looking at it for 10 years, and while we're way below the number, if you looked, it started off at 1 point something, and we're at 3 point something. They're what's called gutty wells, greedy wells. They're groundwater under the influence. We didn't go down into the bedrock. They're 42 feet deep and 45 feet deep. They're in a sand and gravel bank, because when you go into the bedrock, it's very high uranium. It just naturally occurs in this area. It's in the bedrock. People that are on their own wells, we've tested some of them, and they're very high also. And we've told people that they're over the numbers, but the average homeowner has no idea. So here, the uranium is, there's basically, it's much better than bottled water at this point. So all of those things we're kind of dealing with in Croton Falls, and again, that's why we kind of focused on Croton Falls with this master plan. But the town board is literally 100% behind. We have no argument on this. And we've actually, spent funds trying to put ourselves in a good position. We bought the property behind Primavera in case we wanted to use it for a small sewer plant. There's no place else really to put one. We purchased the property behind, along the tracks where the old, thinking maybe we could do something with that for, a space for community or something, community area. When this came up, obviously that's not as much of a priority as this is. So things are changing. The plans are dynamic. I'm glad we're going to have a plan for Croton Falls that everybody agrees on, because the town board's a little bit out in front saying, okay, buy this, hold this, buy this, hold this, do this. And Cynthia keeps on coming and telling us we need the people to tell us what to do, as opposed to you guys deciding all the time. So it's very, very important. And I ask you, if you have any thoughts and any comments, please get them back to the planning board. You can look at the plan on site if you want, online. If you want, I'm at Town Hall, 669-5110. Most people know how to get me. Just drive over and walk in. You don't even have to knock. People don't do that anymore in my office. I've been, I was laughing the other day. I've been on the town board for 34 years, and it's kind of mind-boggling. But I know a lot of you already. If I don't know your names, I'm the worst person with names. I know your faces. So, just please feel come in and sit down and talk if you have any issues and any other input on things about this plan. If you don't want to say it in public, come on over and tell me, and I'll if it makes sense. Some people are a little crazy. I will admit some of those people do show up in town, but if it makes sense, we can get those types of things done. I'm very good at finding money for things, because I'm sure the sidewalks, to do what we want to do, it's probably $4 million. Minimally, right? And then there's traffic calming devices, and it probably is going to involve, if that's the direction you want to go in, it's going to involve some lights and things of that nature to slow the traffic up, to stop them. I've been on the road, and people do fly by. Even if they're going 30, you got the Honda Civics with no mufflers and all these other things that just make a hell of a lot of noise. We managed over in front, if you know where the post office is in North Salem, that was June Road was a through road, and the cars used to fly through there at 55 miles an hour. You can't. I mean, that was basically the speed limit. The DOT they're not going to drop the speed limit. It doesn't do anything. And we finally got them to agree to put four-way stops in, which made a complete difference in terms of, the ability to actually think when you're near that intersection. It quieted everything down. And there's things we can do here. So I just leave you with, please get back to the planning board, get back to, you can call the planning department, my place up, or send us emails, wlucas@northsalemny.org. You can find it online. And let me know what you think and what's important to you here, because this is your community, and we're trying to make not Croton Falls better, but my interest is to make sure the people that live here in 100 years are as proud of it as we are now, right? So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Remember, 2 o'clock, there's another little ceremony here.
Yeah, we're doing it backwards. We're having a ribbon that we're cutting.